I'm Steve Sapato, and you're listening to Speaker Talks podcast for speakers, authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to help other people improve their business. Today, I have the great pleasure of being able to interview somebody who is absolutely a public relations person, and they're going to help us learn all about public relations. And her name is Andrea Pass. And Andrea, I guess I should bring you on. Are you there?
Hello, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is great. Andrea's out in New Jersey. We were just talking about she's going to go for a walk after this so she can get her vitamin D in, right? So she's up in New Jersey. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I will not put any sunscreen on when I go for my quick little walk at 5 o'clock.
You're just talking about how vitamin D, most Americans are vitamin D deficient, especially above Mason-Dixon line or whatever they call that thing, where in the north, especially in the wintertime, we don't get enough vitamin D. We say, well, we go out in the sun, yeah, but we put sunscreen on too. So even down here in the south, I'm down here in Tampa, even when we're down in the south, we put sunscreen on so we don't get our vitamin D. So we have to be taking supplements. So that's funny that we talk like
exactly.
But Andrea, you're an expert in public relations?
Yeah, I've been involved in public relations pretty much my whole life. I was always the publicity chair of every committee in high school. And even when I went to college, I was always doing the publicity and writing the press releases and calling the newspaper and making sure the events got coverage. So it was pretty much logical that I went into PR, even though my major in college was radio, TV, film, and I was going to be the next Dan Rather. And then I realized I loved PR, and so stuck with the PR route.
You know, that's really cool that you started in something that you've stayed with almost your whole life. That's really cool that you love it that much. Most of us, we got out of college, we graduated. Like I ran a real estate appraisal company for many years. I've had many different jobs. And one of the things when I hired my other appraisers, I had one guy who was a horticulturist. He graduated college with a degree in horticulture, another guy with a psychiatry degree. Most of us graduated and we never stayed in that field at all. So what a blessing that you were able to.
Yeah, it worked out that way. I mean, I went straight to CBS in New York City because I was going to be Dan Rather. And there was a freeze in the broadcast area. So I got a job working for Woman's Day magazine. And I'm going to date myself because every woman had to take a typing test. And every woman who was hired in those days was hired as an assistant. And men didn't have to take a typing test. I mean, we can get in a whole debate about that, which I don't want to do. But I stayed there until I could move over to the broadcast area to get a job in PR. And then I decided PR was my roots. So after I left CBS, I was at the agency end of things. And 3 years ago, I formed Andrea Pass Public Relations, and I haven't turned back.
So what made you form that? What advantage does that give you? Because you think, boy, if you're with a company, like CBS or something, you've got all the benefits, you get paid regularly, you got insurance. What made you decide to go on your own?
Well, I had left CBS. I was a baby. I was barely married, it was a long, long time ago. And I went to the agency route and someone else's name was always on the door. And I worked the agency route for a long, long time. I mean, 30 plus years. But I got to a point that I was complaining. And I would secure press coverage and get in touch with the account executive and say, okay, find out if your client can do the interview, Wednesday or Friday at 12 noon. And my colleagues wouldn't get back to me and I'd lose the interview. And that reflected on me. And I got to the point that I was complaining. And then I said to a few friends, am I a complainer? Maybe I'm a complainer. Maybe that's just who I am. And when I went out on my own, and my clients kept telling me, go out on your own. You need to go out on your own. You should do this, go out on your own. You can, you won't complain. And when I went out on my own 3 years ago, it has been wonderful. I mean, there are challenges. There are times that you have a few months that you don't have as many clients as you'd like, and then you pick up and you have too many clients. But it's a pleasure to be able to pick and choose. I'll say to people, no, I don't think we're a good fit. And I set expectations realistically with my clients. Yes, we can secure press coverage, or this is a challenge. We need to come up with different angles to secure press coverage. The client has to be available to participate. So clients that think that the PR person can do it all, I lead the horse to water. I lead the journalists to the client. The client has to participate in the interview. The client has to send out a product for review. So if a client doesn't send the product and I'm following up with the reporter, to see if the reporter is going to review that product, and I find out the product never got there,
Oh,
that's a problem. So these things, they happen, but I'm so pleased because the clients that I've had over the years and the relationships that I've built, I've been able to secure press coverage, keep my clients relevant, give them that third-party editorial endorsement. Because, so many people, Steve, don't understand the difference between public relations and advertising.
oh yeah.
And it's challenging because advertising, you pay for it. Your ad is going to appear on that TV station, radio station, blog, newspaper. In PR, it's editorial content. You can't control the message. You can control what you say, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to take a snippet of that and include that in the article. So you're getting that editorial endorsement because you're getting featured, and you can tag the media and use that on your social, that you've been featured on this podcast, in this newspaper, in that magazine, on this TV show. And if your content and the story that you're telling can be anytime, anywhere, it's evergreen, reuse it, repost it in 6 weeks, in 3 months, again in 6 months, because you have new audiences absorbing content.
That's you said several things in there, and that's so important, especially on the podcast here. We talk to people who are speakers, authors, entrepreneurs, people who are constantly looking to try and find a way to get noticed. And isn't that one of the most difficult things? Is I can be a public speaker all I want, but trying to get, and we get on this thing called HARO, HARO, where you're supposed to help a reporter out or something. And I found that that's almost useless, because no matter how many times you write to somebody, they never get back with you. You don't evidently have something of value for them. So that's a tough place. How do you get people noticed? What do you do that makes, like, get someone like me or the people that we represent here? How do you get us there?
Well, that's the thing. The thing is the one source that you just mentioned, that's one source. Someone like me who's in public relations, I subscribe to databases. So I'm spending my overhead, my money, on subscribing to databases, subscribing to newsletters, and I joke, but I'm serious, that I'm a PI in PR. I'm a private investigator in public relations, because I'm researching what's the best media outlet? How do I reach them? If they're not responding, how do I go on to the next person? What do I do? Because there are so many of us that are pitching that reporter. What's going to make us stand out? And, it just could be a word that the reporter is looking for that day. There's not a necessary rhyme or reason to what makes it through and what doesn't. Certainly if you're some big celebrity and you call, for a number of years, I represented Chef Wolfgang Puck. And especially when he does the governor's ball around the Academy Awards, I would be able to call any TV station and say, I'm with Chef Wolfgang Puck. He's going to be in New York these days, or LA these days, or wherever he's going to be. And they'd say, yes, we want him, because he's a celebrity. He does cooking demonstrations. He does the governor's ball for the Academy Awards. But the average business person is not a celebrity.
Yeah. What's the deal with that? I'm not a celebrity. I think I am. I should be. Right?
And you should
I bill
be.
myself as the most famous, unfamous person in America. So shouldn't that make me a celebrity somewhere, right?
Yeah, but what's important to understand is there are audiences interested in your message. There are audiences that are learning from you and who will want to hire you or connect with you. And it's a process. And I think that's what's important for speakers, entrepreneurs, pseudo celebrities to understand, is that we have to find what's realistic. I remember in the olden days when I was a younger PR person and everyone wanted to be on Oprah. Well, you're not a celebrity, you're not going to be on Oprah. Then there was the phase, I want to be on Ellen. Okay, $1 million gets you a promotional fee, you could be on Ellen. But you need to
$1 million.
Oh yeah, $1 million or more now to be, because they paid a promotional fee. If they're not a celebrity, they're paying these fees that you could do so much more with your $1 million.
Probably.
And it's almost like people who are spending all this money to have one Instagram post from a Kardashian. Okay, if that one post is going to help you sell out of product, more power to you, but it may not. And now you've put all your money in one basket. When you're doing a public relations campaign, someone like me is out there looking for different opportunities and working two different ways. I work proactively, meaning I talk to my clients and I say, okay, who's your target audience? And I make sure I'm proactively reaching out to that target audience. Then I work reactively. I subscribe to all of these newsletters. I'm on a lot of social media private groups where journalists, bloggers, reporters, hosts are saying, I'm looking for this. Does anyone have this? I'm specifically working on this particular topic. And so if I have someone that fits in that topic, for instance, I had an organizer who was quoted in a number of publications when it was the first of the year. We were talking about, for your New Year's resolution, get organized. Okay, so they fit into that topic. And that was me being reactive. But a good public relations person is going to constantly be out there and looking for new things and setting realistic expectations with a client. Because just before this call, I did a pre-interview with a client of mine for a podcast. And the podcaster ended up loving what the client had to say. And the first available date for this podcaster to book my client for the interview is 3 months from now.
Oh, yeah.
And in his particular case, he then airs the interview the next day. I have other situations where someone will book someone for an interview in a month, 2 months, and it could be 3 or 4 months later before that interview will air because there's only so many hours in the day.
That's
so
right.
Not everyone is running their podcast or their show every single solitary day. So you have to fit in. I was talking with a contact of mine at ABC National, and I had proposed a story. This was about a month ago. And she said, can you get back to me in about 4 months? I'm totally booked every day for the next 4 months on for her segment on that show. Okay, I have a pop-up to remind me about a month before that date so that I reach out to her. And if I'm not annoying her and I'm reaching out appropriately, fingers are crossed that I'm going to be able to get my client featured on that show. But it's my job to pitch and place, pitch and place, pitch and place.
Wow, that's nice. So, what kind of clients do you look for? I mean, you look for we'd all like to have the millionaires who would want to invest their money. But, do you work with small businesses? Do you work with medium businesses? Who do you work with?
Yes, I'm pretty much solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. What I like about those categories, I'm dealing directly with the decision maker. I found that over the course of my career, when I would have to deal with this person in this department to talk to this person who's this, and then the calendar for this person, by the time we did that, I would lose an interview, or the secretary might know that the boss is available that day at that time, but the boss didn't tell the secretary that he's really traveling to a conference. And so I was wasting more time going through the hierarchy to get to that person to see if they're available for an interview or can give me feedback on a question. I don't know the answer to everything, and I don't have to. I have to be able to reach the press. And then if I need a question answered, I need my client to then tell me, okay, the answer to this is this, because it pertains to the client. And so it's really it's really being out there and getting that message across. So I really like working with small businesses because, gosh, with small businesses and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, there's such a feeling of heart.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that. I love that they care so much about what they're doing. And myself as a solopreneur with Andrea Pass Public Relations, I'm the same. I care what I'm doing. So you get a different feeling when you're in that boat. So my clients are anyone from speakers and authors and solopreneurs to products type of people to business coaches, wellness coaches, beauty, fitness, you name it. I love working with such a wide range of categories that don't have a compliance department.
I like that don't have a compliance department. When you said something, a couple of things I want to jump on there. First of all, while I'm thinking about it, how do they contact you?
AndreaPassPR.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Andrea Pass. You could find me there on Facebook, Andrea Pass Public Relations. So pretty much everywhere, and always available to have a consultation and to talk a bit about what your goals, your listeners' goals might be, and how I can create a program that's going to get them toward those goals.
Cool. Okay, Andrea Pass. So if you're listening, because we do put this out both as a podcast and as a video cast, right? So it's Andrea, Andrea Pass, Pass. So it's Andrea Pass PR, as in public relations.com. Is that what you said?
Correct.
There you
Correct.
go. And so
Correct.
I highly recommend that you guys reach out, because guess what? What if she gives you one break that changes your whole business? That's one of those amazing things that happens every once in a while. It's like running across a viral video type thing. But also, Andrea, it was interesting because I'm one of those guys. I love bucking the system. Is that the right phrase? So I've heard the term recently. It's called Zoom fatigue, and I'm like, there. I've been putting out articles all over the place. There's no Zoom fatigue. I'm hoping one of the reporters will pick me up, or somebody will pick me up. I go, there's no Zoom fatigue. And, because when I talk to people, they go, well, that's the term for people who spend too much time now. And I go, no, people spend all that time on their video games. They spend that time watching TV. They spend their time doing all this stuff. They've been on video for years now. I said, you guys are calling it Zoom fatigue because of the situation we're in. But in truth, it's boring speaker syndrome.
Oh, well, I don't quite know if it's that, but I think what's very interesting about this world is we've met so many wonderful people. And I met you at a networking event. I wouldn't have met you because we were going to physical networking events. And this has opened up our world, that the relationships I have with people all over the country, and even in the UK. I go to a networking group in the UK, and it's the funniest thing because I've met these people at networking groups in the US. And so now when the time comes and I can travel, and I'm actually in London, I have people to meet for tea. So but Zoom fatigue, I think, is because people are not using it properly. And I had actually met someone who his whole business is about how to avoid Zoom fatigue and how to present yourself on Zoom. And he didn't want to do PR. And about 2 weeks later comes out a big study from some university in the Midwest about Zoom fatigue. And it was on the Today Show and CBS This Morning and Good Morning America and MSNBC. It was everywhere. And I said to him, do you want to comment? There's still time to get into the story and get quoted.
You should have called me. I'd have commented.
And I didn't know you at that time, so now I know the answer.
Well, because and I tell people all the time, that's one of the big challenges is and there's probably lots of reasons for Zoom fatigue, but my stand is that most of us, a lot of times you get in front of a meeting, and especially when they're in person, we interact. Their people are right here. When you put them on a small screen, and I tell people all the time, Hollywood movie stars that couldn't make it on TV, and TV stars who couldn't make it in Hollywood. And you're like, why is that? It takes different skills on the smaller screen and on the bigger screen, different things in person and not in person. And so that's what I tell people all the time is most of the people I've met who are boring speakers, I got a website out called Stop Boring Speakers, right? Because most of us haven't been taught how to interact on the personal level on the small screen, that we haven't been taught how to ask the right questions, how to involve people. So people sit out there just going, oh no, and it's just tough. It's tough to stay awake. It's tough to stay involved if you don't have somebody like yourself or myself who really has something to say and a way to say it that keeps people coming back, right?
And certainly you have to know your audience. And that's one of the things I prepare my clients for when they're going to do an interview. Make sure you're listening to a few episodes of a show. Read this website. Here are some links of the way the articles or interviews have been, or here are some samples of this reporter's works. Do a little homework so you're prepared and know your audience. So if I got on this call today with you and talked about my pandemic baking and how much I love pandemic baking and all the recipes I made, well, that would have been well and good, but that's not the topic your audience is interested in.
Then I'd have put you on the happiness agenda. right?
This
Put
is
you on the
for
put you on the happiness agenda so that you could help all of us be happier by learning how to bake better. I mean, that's my advantage is I have two different ways to go, right? But
yeah,
that's right. That's right. It's
know
knowing
your audience.
exactly. That's right. Complete. Now that's true. As a professional speaker, that's what we tell people all the time. When I'm training new staff or when I train new people how to be better speakers, I mean, people coming to me for their training. And one of the things I say is if you get the opportunity to go the night before, so if you're doing a keynote or if you're doing a breakout session, go the night before if they're having a cocktail party. You get to meet some of the people, get to know them, learn about what they find funny, what they find interesting, how their culture is. Because I've been in those situations where they'll say, "Oh, so and they're so and so," and I go, "Who's so and so?" And they go, "Well, she's like the CEO," you know. And I go, "Okay, I haven't had the opportunity to meet her." And they go, "Oh, you don't want to meet her." And I go, "Really?" They go, "Oh no, she's like, and I go, "Oh wow." And of course, being the speaker, I have to make it a point to go. So you make your way over there and introduce yourself. And it turns out that person, when they are not on for their employees, they're really fun, they're really interesting, they have a lot to say. And I've had the most luck when I look at somebody like yourself, Andrea, and say, can I? We'll be talking. You'll say something. I'll say, first of all, can I use your name, Andrea, when I mention you on stage? And you'll say yes or no. And then I'll say, and can I use this story that you shared? And they'll, yes or no. But sometimes when you get on stage, first of all, it gives you credibility when I say, hey, I was just talking with Andrea. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. For you, that's Mrs. Pass, right?
But
And people,
I think the point that you're making, Steve, is so valid because you have to know your audience. You have to make sure that you're engaging in your audience, and you have to remind your audience during a conversation who you are. And I think that's the thing. When someone is watching us on video, they're going to see that it says Andrea Pass Public Relations. However, if someone's listening to us on audio, it's important that I say I'm with Andrea Pass Public Relations. And I bring that up especially to my authors because they'll do an interview and I've gone over everything with them beforehand. I've media trained them and they do the interview and they don't mention the name of the book. They say, well, in my book.
oh,
Now, that's fine. You don't want to say the name of your book 20 times
no, that's right.
because then it's going to sound like an ad. But a few times
Go buy my book.
sprinkle,
Go buy my book. Go buy my book.
but sprinkle the name of your book or your product or your speaking topic. Sprinkle it throughout an interview so that
Absolutely.
people will remember because everyone has short attention spans and you are thinking of a million different things at once. And then suddenly a text comes through on your phone or a pop-up comes on your computer and suddenly you're slightly distracted because someone walks behind you in the room you're in and it's, well, what are they doing there? And so I think that you have to remember to remind the audience of who you are and what your topic is. So if you want to be a speaker and you're a motivational speaker, you have to make sure you're telling them, well, it's important for me to speak in front of audiences. I've overcome this obstacle. I'm a motivational speaker for XYZ. And so someone will say, oh, I actually know a group that's looking for a motivational speaker for their next, virtual event or in-person event. So you just never know what the buzzword.
But it's when you say the distractions, a little of this. I did a humorous thing for Zoom meetings. It was like how to Zoom improper Zoom etiquette. And so I was playing the stupid part while I narrated it also in the background. But it's funny to me how people don't have a clue. We were on a networking event the other day, and a mortgage person is in her house, and her daughter's behind her. Two daughters. She has two teenage daughters who are home with her, and they're sitting behind her, and their feet are up on the desk, and they got their legs doing this. And I said something, in kind of a humorous way. I said, you should probably put up a Zoom, a virtual background. And she went, oh, I don't like messing with those. It's my family. It doesn't matter. And you're like, wow, really?
Well, quite honestly, Zoom and all of these virtual meetings that we're doing, it's PR, it's public relations for you. So you have to present yourself in such a way. And I've written articles and tips about this as well. The people that lean on their hand like they're bored out of their mind, the people with the baseball cap over their eyes, the people laying back, the people chewing. And I understand we're very, very busy, but then get onto the call late or skip that particular call. I don't want to see you chewing. Go right ahead, drink water, drink coffee, drink soda. Don't drink it from a can. Don't drink a water bottle. I was on a call, they're twisting it. Squish, squish, squish. If you want to drink your water, put your water in a glass. If you're having coffee, go right ahead. That's fine, but know what the appearance is. If you're in a totally wrinkled t-shirt with some saying on it, what's the impression? And then you're going to tell me that you're an attorney?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. And so I always get a kick out of when people say, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it does. I mean, I get dressed up 4 days a week. I am in a dress with tights and boots and jewelry and makeup, and I'm working. And I think that if you want others to respect what you're doing, you have to respect yourself.
Absolutely.
And appearance is everything. And I'm not saying wear a suit. I've seen people wear suits,
Yeah.
but wear a button-down shirt. Make sure, your shirt is very nice. It's ironed. You look neat. You don't look rumpled. You're presenting yourself. And I think that's important because it's PR. The elevator pitch, it's old news now. We've been elevator pitching for too long. If you don't know your elevator pitch, then you have a problem.
See, Andrea, when it gets to that, I mean, I'm as a public speaker, trainer person, one of the things I tell them is it's not an elevator pitch, it's an opportunity moment, right?
Yeah.
Because they if you don't understand yet, and yet everybody says they understand, people don't want to hear about you. If I started telling you my story, eventually you go, oh my gosh, right? So yet in an elevator pitch, they tell about their company and they tell about what they do, and you're like, you're not getting it. People don't want to know that anymore. And I tell people all the time, I said, if you can bore me in a 1-minute presentation about your elevator talk, think of what your 20-minute presentation's like. Boring me to death. Oh my gosh, quit it.
And you should be able to describe your business in 3 or 4 words.
Oh, yeah.
At this point, press coverage for brand awareness.
That's right.
And if you want to learn more,
I like that one. Press coverage for brand awareness. That's really cool.
If you want to learn more, then you're going to arrange a one-on-one meeting with me and we'll talk about that. But for the person who says, I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this, and they have 20 things, we cannot do 20 things well. No one can.
Even the one I love, I always pick on realtors because they're so easy to pick on. But it's like my company's been around 450 years and then I do this as a realtor. I take care of you. I do this. I go, that's what every realtor says.
Yeah.
What are you doing different? And they go, oh no, they don't give the same service I give. You're like that. You're missing it. That's not what it's all about.
No,
so it is funny, that people really have no idea that, and maybe they're learning. Maybe it's gradually come around. Like you say, this situation has pushed this virtual reality, virtual systems right to the front. When all this virtual happening, we have to start understanding that it's now in front of us, and this is not just a passing fad anymore. This is going to be around for a long time because, like you said, sometimes it's such a real advantage that we meet so many more people this way, right?
And it's wonderful. It really is wonderful to be able to meet so many people, to learn about so many people, but I'm not necessarily going to connect with the local realtor from outside of Philadelphia because I don't know anyone who's moving to outside of Philadelphia. I'm not moving to outside of Philadelphia. There's not enough press for me to get you press coverage because you probably are not allowed to get press coverage because of compliance for the larger corporations.
Yeah, that's
right. So it's important to understand who is your audience and how do you portray yourself to that audience. And I meet a lot of financial planners. I love my financial person. I'm not going anywhere else. So it's you're meeting a lot of very, very interesting people, but keep your pitch short and sweet. When you're doing an interview, keep your interview to the point. Because if you go off on a tangent when you're talking to a reporter who's going to pick one quote, then maybe the wrong quote is being pitched. So it's okay for you to repeat yourself in an interview, especially with someone who's going to eventually do the written word, because they're not going to include 45 minutes of a conversation. They're going to include a few sentences.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Tell me again, what phrase describes you? You had it like 4 or 5 words.
I did. Press coverage for brand awareness.
I'm going to write that down. I hope that's okay.
It's 5. It ends up being 5. But It's short and it's sweet. The other thing I bring up frequently, based on research I've done, is that Americans consume approximately 11 hours a day of content. Right. Shouldn't you want to be in that content? And content is different than advertising.
Oh yeah.
Content is editorial. Content is educational, informational, inspirational. So, I mean, all of these things are what content is. And so there are times that I've gotten on calls and I've said, okay, and it'll be 8 in the morning, and I'll say, okay, how many people absorbed some content today? Raise your hands. And everyone will look at me. I said, none of you watched a
Really?
TV show, read a newspaper, scrolled the internet, and then suddenly the hands are all going up. And I said, it's how many times are we maybe at an event and we're listening to a speaker that we're scrolling at the same time?
Oh yeah.
How many times are we even relaxing in the evening watching a TV show and we're skimming the newspaper and scrolling at the same time? And so we're
Absolutely.
absorbing all this content. But if you, business person, solopreneur, speaker, author, if you're not in any of that content, you got to be in it to win it. And I know
Absolutely.
it's hokey, I get it. But if you're not out there, you can't say, oh, but I was interviewed by such and such 6 years ago. Unless you're reusing that every day on your social media, no one's going to care. Stay relevant. You know, if you're out there, and I tell people, Google me as an example. Google Andrea Pass or Andrea Pass Public Relations. I consider myself a client of mine. Because if you don't spend enough time on yourself, you know, you're a speaking coach, but I'm sure you're out there speaking as well.
Oh
And
yeah.
so you are a client of yours. It's a
You know,
mindset.
that's right. It's a mindset. You're right. You know, that's one of the things, when I'm teaching people how to be better presenters or something, initially when we start, people go, well, you don't understand, Steve. My material is it's boring. And I go, no, your material might be dry. You are boring. And that's what, yeah. And people don't really, it's like, I don't care who you are. There's stories to go with every piece of information. There's ways to present. And that's what you do. You help people get basically unstuck, right? So that if I'm used to just going, well, I do this, you go, no, 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 you do this. And that's what it's all about, right?
I mean, telling a story that someone wants to hear, whether it's me telling a story of wanting to be the next Dan Rather, or uh, or someone telling a story of how they came up with the idea for their book, or someone, I have a client right now who, he's true inspiration. He ended up having a stroke from having chicken pox as a child, and he had a stroke in his 30s. He's a paddleboarder, and now he's unbalanced. And so now
Oh,
he's become a motivational speaker, and he's called the unbalanced paddleboarder. And how he survived because he couldn't do his career anymore.
yeah.
And in his 30s, having this stroke because he had chickenpox as a kid. And, so here is this person that had to reinvent himself. And he's out there now telling his story, but inspiring other people to not give up. I mean, I have another client who focuses on positive self-talk, because how many times are people focused on negative
Oh,
self-talk?
I think
And it's
that's America, isn't it? That's America.
but it's also the past year.
Oh yeah, the pastor. Well, I tell the story, Andrea, just so you know. Go back to 2008. I owned a nightclub and a pub back in Moline, Illinois, and I was working one night, and a person who was a regular came in, had a great job, worked at one of the companies there in that area, and was like sitting at the pub at the bar, going, "Oh, whoa, oh, the economy, oh, the world." And I went, "Wait a minute." I'll call him Bob for lack of the right name. I went, "Wait a minute, Bob. Why are you down?" He said, "Because of all this stuff." I went, "Well, did you lose your job?" He said, "No." I went, "Did you get demoted?" He said, "No." I went, "Did they cut your pay?" He said, "No." I went, "Well, what has happened for you?" He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I went, "Well, everything's still hunky dory for you. You're in that real good life position." I said, "How can you be in a bad mood?" And that was really, what you're talking about is people want to feel bad, I guess, right?
I think so. And I think that especially with this client, with his whole self-talk, and he's coming out with an app, Self-Talk Plus app. And you look at these stories of business people who have something to say, speakers who have something to say, authors who have something to say, and there are audiences. And in press, in public relations content, we are finding the right audience. Do you need to reach parents? Well, then we're reaching a parenting audience, solopreneurs and entrepreneurial audience, a fitness audience, a health audience. There are so many different audiences, and there's so many press opportunities to be had, but having an outside public relations person makes you bigger because perception is reality. And well, I'm going to forward this to my publicist, and you're bigger, and the publicist is getting all the information to the host or the producer or the reporter, so that we make sure you are noted correctly, the correct spelling, correct title, if they're going to link to a website, if they're going to link on social media, because one letter misspelled means you don't get the press coverage. And I worked for someone a million years ago, and we had a client, and it was some ridiculous website, like a bunch of initials. And my boss always left out one of the letters.
Oh.
And I would say to her, and that one letter led you to a competitor site.
Oh,
Wasn't
man.
just a different site. It was a competitor in the same industry. And the owner of the company would say to me, "Oh, don't worry." I said, "Well, we're trying." And this is when the internet was still a baby thing.
Oh, yeah, young, yeah.
So people who were going on the internet for a search, they were being very careful. You had to put in the exact correct website. You couldn't do a Google. It just didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm dating myself. But those things are very important in making sure that people can find a client, find a product, find a book, find a potential speaker. That's what you want to do. And I think that for every business, public relations should be in the marketing budget. Take some dollars away from advertising and move it to public relations, because you're going to get that editorial brand awareness.
And I want Andrea to tell us how to get in touch with her again. And Andrea, if you'll tell everybody, because I want to talk with you, not necessarily today after the show, because I've got something else coming up. But boy, Andrea got me. I certainly want to learn more about how I might need her services. I hope you've done it too. So Andrea, how do we get in touch with you again?
Well, you could reach me on my website, Andrea Pass PR. I'm also on LinkedIn, Andrea Pass, and on Facebook, Andrea Pass Public Relations. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well, but we'll just leave it at those. But Andrea Pass, P as in Peter, ASS as in Sam, PR.com. And I do have an appointments tab on my website. If you'd like to set up a complimentary consultation with me, you can do so. Please put some notes in that request and make sure that you came to me by listening to Steve Sapato's Speaker Talks.
Yay. And what's interesting is she talked about, how to put things in and how to say things the right way. All that's really important to you being found, you being noticed. And that's vital to your success, is making sure that, because I have to admit, Andrea, one of the things as we wrap this up that's always bugged me is you go to different sites and people will put like Bob the Pumpkin Eater or something, as their name, rather than Steve Sapato. All of my sites, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, are all Steve Sapato. But yet some people almost never use their own name, and they run businesses and they want to be found. How do you explain that?
And it's very interesting, because I was just reading an article about that earlier today. I think it was on Inc.com, talking about people who name their businesses after themselves. And I think when you're a solopreneur, to name your business after yourself makes sense, because it's going to be easier to find you. But obviously, if you have more of a medium to large size company, it may not be named after you, but then make sure you're going to set up social media pages that then go back to the business page.
Oh, so, if they went back to the business page, I'd say it makes sense. But some of those have no relationship to what they're doing. You wonder, how did they get that? They just made something up, or somebody called them when they were 12. I ask people all the time, I go, how did you get that name on your, and they're like, well, somebody called me that when I was 12, or that was my nickname. And you're like, wow, well, how would anybody find you on any of these things? So I find that fascinating. So Andrea, I sure appreciate you being here today. Tons of information, really a good interview, and I really appreciate you being on. I'm probably about 3 weeks backed up myself on this, so I will certainly let you know when it's coming out, and I will send you a copy prior to that. If anybody has questions for Andrea, it's Andrea Pass PR.com. She would love to hear from you. If you want to talk to her, guess what? Talking is free. So book some time if you want to know if she can help you grow your business, grow your company or organization. Vital that you guys take advantage of this. Andrea, any last words as we wrap this up?
I just thank you so much for welcoming me. Great conversation. And the next time you pick up a newspaper, read a blog, listen to a podcast, or watch TV, say, I should be on there. Let me call Andrea.
Oh, what a cool idea. Hey, this is Steve Sapato, and you've been listening to the Speaker Talks podcast for speakers, authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to grow their business. If we can do anything for you, please write to me, steve@stevesapato.com. In the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous 2021. God bless.